and we're live. Cool.
Yeah. So this is another good topic to start with. I've been talking about finding my webcam. I finally have it today. Um, it's a good thing I found it because I bought it for like $50 a couple years ago. It's like a nice Logitech,
Uh-huh.
um, like C920 or something like that. And I went and looked it up today. I guess with all the Zoom calls and Jitsi calls going on, everyone wants a webcam. They're like $200
Oh
now.
yeah?
I was like, oh, I gotta. I actually found that out before I found my camera, and it motivated me to
Yeah.
find my camera.
Yeah, the camera I have I wish was better. I thought I was buying a nicer one. I mean, it's halfway decent, but not the best. I probably spent 40 or 50 bucks on it. I had bought the cameras I owned previously were probably 20 bucks or less because that's usually how I roll.
Yeah.
Um, but I bought this one and it's decent. But one of the things I didn't know when I bought it, then I realized I was like, oh, that's cool, and then I ended up not liking it, is that it doesn't have autofocus, which lots of times webcams are constantly going out of focus. So I thought, that's cool, it's not autofocus, but I find that I'm constantly trying to focus it by turning this, and it never seems
Hey,
to
that looks
stay.
better.
So, um,
That's pretty funny.
but let's see, no viewers yet. But
Did you hear that Raspberry Pi came out with a camera module with swappable lenses?
I'm not sure if I heard that. No, I don't know if I heard
Um,
that.
They just came out with a new camera module that you can actually put different lenses on. So
That's cool. I'm finding myself less and less. I have a couple of Raspberry Pis. I
yeah,
got one on my TV works great. I have Kodi Box on it. And I don't install all those plugins that mess everything up. I've got the YouTube plugin, which I don't even really need because I have a script on my desktop that once I copy a URL, YouTube URL, I hit Windows Alt K, and YouTube DL gets the direct link to the video and then sends it to that box. So if my kids are in the other room, I can just copy a link and send it. So the plugin's only there for when I'm not home and my wife needs to use the keyboard to search a YouTube video. But then I've
yeah.
got my two servers back here running, on Raspberry Pis. Um,
Hmm.
but I, if I had to do it again, or if I ever need to replace those, I don't think I'm gonna go with a Raspberry Pi. Um, I think that I would just buy myself a Chromebook. Because the Raspberry Pi, once you buy a case, the Raspberry Pi, the power supplies, and all that stuff, you're gonna end up spending $75.
Yeah.
And you can get a Chromebook, and I don't need anything very powerful for my servers. Um, you can get a Chromebook for like 125 bucks and install Debian on that,
Yeah.
and it's a lot easier if there's a problem. It's like I have a TV down here on the ground that if for some reason they're not booting, I gotta turn that on, put it to the right input, look for that, and then I don't know. I just think it, then I got battery backups for that I buy. You can see one stacked right there, right, right there, and uh, and every 2 years I got to replace the battery in that, and that's another $50. So I think that if I got a Chromebook, installed Debian on it, I have a Chromebook that has Debian on it that's like I use as a tablet,
Yeah.
and I just think it'd be easier, and I don't know. And the Raspberry Pis are really cool, and I love buying little ARM devices. But when it comes to like home automation stuff, you know, like ESP chips, like this one here. This is an ESP, this is an ESP32 with the camera, and it's $6 with a camera. Uses less power and a lot cheaper than a Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pis are definitely awesome for certain
Yeah.
things, but I see some people use them for projects that a $3 or a $5 chip could replace. And you don't
Yeah.
have the boot times, you don't have the SD cards, you don't have the cost, stuff like that.
You
Um,
have people like me that just use desktops
yeah, well,
forever.
you know what? I had someone criticize me on one of my older videos the other day because I use an ESP to trigger my doorbell. And it's just
Yeah.
detects the button and it sends an HTTP request to my desktop. At which point my desktop then sends signals out to all my other devices. It sends it out to my phone or to my web server. It sends one out to which then sends out a text to my phone and my wife's phone. It triggers a camera to take a picture and it sends a signal to my wife's computer. He's like, well, that's just kind of stupid. a 300-watt computer to get your doorbell to work. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm like, that's what I chose to do. I can have that the ESP send signals to all those devices, but my desktop's on all the time, and I'm always going to want a notification on my desktop when the doorbell rings. So I just decided to use that. That way I can just modify a shell script on my desktop if I want to do something different, and I don't have to reflash the ESP.
Yeah.
But I could have set up a script on my Raspberry or on my Raspberry Pi on my router, and had the ESP trigger the router and the router do all that work. So, and then he went into this whole thing about, I got a smart light bulb, in my upstairs room, but I need to go back to a regular bulb because if I forget my phone, then I can't turn the light on and off. I was like, well, it sounds like you got some proprietary thing that's very restrictive. I go, I have a couple of smart plugs in my house, which I can walk up to turn on and off. I can turn on and off with a remote that costs $3, or any computer or phone I can press a button and turn them on and off with. So I have those options. I'm not locked into, and it's all doing it directly in the house. Again, it's I'm sending an HTTP request to an ESP32 that has a 433 megahertz chip on it that sends signal out to these outlets that run on 433 megahertz. So it's like each outlet costs $5. Actually, technically less because it's $25 for 5 outlets and 2 remotes. So, but it all depends on how.
Around like Zigbee or Z-Wave?
I haven't. Just I know I should. I have one actually because that yellow case that is supposed to be holding my servers, but they're all just dangling out by the wires. Was given to me by my buddy who's a locksmith, and that's supposed to be an enclosure for a digital lock. The inside part of a digital keypad and stuff. And he had a Zigbee chip in that because it was wireless to the thing, and he left that in there. So I have one, but I've never used it. I have a couple of chips that aren't the Zigbees, but they're 2.4 gigahertz or 2.9 gigahertz, whatever. And I played with them once, and I found that they're supposed to be longer distance and send faster. If you need more data, they're better for that than the 433 or the 333 megahertz or 315, whatever it is. But it's just overkill for any of my projects currently. I could definitely see projects like I see people making wireless game controllers with them and stuff like that, and you need something higher rate for that sort of thing. So I bought a couple of them, just tried doing a little thing where it sends a signal back and forth, and they're supposed to be a lot longer distance, but I found they were very positional, with the built-in antenna. Obviously, you can always hook another antenna, but if they were pointing right at each other, they could go pretty far. But if they were just sitting on my counter, it's like, why is it not connecting?
So I run most of my house off either 2.4 regular Wi-Fi or Smart Hub, Samsung Smart Things Hub or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's great, except they've been really kind of dumb. They transitioned from an old Smart Things software to a new Smart Things software,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't transfer everything over to the new Smart Things software, and they kind of, I guess, just decided it wasn't worth it. So they're like, okay, well, for some things, just use the old one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's some products, like we bought a smart switch, and I love all my smart stuff, especially because this is a chip that can go behind your light switch and toggle 2 different switches. And I don't have a lot of room in my gangs, and I don't like it looking like they're smart switches.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't mind it, but an actual smart switch won't fit because I don't have enough room in the box.
Right.
So this is like perfect for both of them. The light won't turn on unless you go modify a specific piece of code, and you have to go do that through the old Smart Things, which is a different URL than the new Smart Things, but they're both Smart Things.
Mm-hmm.
It is really confusing.
Yeah. First of all, let me real quick. People who are watching, because we have 6 viewers now, let us know how the volume is comparatively, because I know in previous weeks I'd be louder or Andrew would be louder. Let me know if we're both at good volumes so I can adjust that. I'm Chris and he's Andrew, in case there's some confusion there. Talking about the hub, that's kind of what I've got going on, except for, I made it myself with the ESP and the little chip. So it's literally the ESP's $3 or $4, the wireless chips like $1.50, $2, and then I have a cell phone charger that was $3 or $4. We're looking at $10 worth of stuff. And one thing though is like I live out in the middle of nowhere. Another thing with like the Zigbee and stuff, even though I haven't played with it, I'm using that 433 megahertz, which is just sending a signal out blindly. They're not actually talking to each other. It's just one
Yeah.
sending a signal. So there's no security on it whatsoever. I'm only using it to control lights. But if I live somewhere, I mean, there's no one in range. Someone would have to come onto my property for them to really. But if I lived in a town, with a city with a lot of people, anyone with a couple of dollars worth of chips could sniff it and then start turning my lights on and off. Because I'm doing it, through Wi-Fi, but then from the Wi-Fi, it's going to that little server and sending it out, and there's no encryption keys or anything like that. So definitely isn't the best idea for everybody.
Yeah.
But definitely a cheap and usable for me. Um, I feel like I was going to say something else on that. Oh, yeah, and then I did a video once where someone was criticizing me for. Oh, I was using. It was actually after I had a conversation with you, and I was talking about using a webcam to detect movement to set off an alarm somewhere, or actually, I used my camera that was in the garage that has an IR sensor and goes into night mode,
Mm-hmm.
right? And someone goes, "Oh, you should never do anything securely through Wi-Fi because Wi-Fi is so insecure." It's like, first of all,
Yeah.
Wi-Fi is one of the most secure protocols out there. It's had a lot of bumps in the road, but that's just because it's so widely used and it's been run through the test. Most wireless things, if you're going to do anything wireless at all, Wi-Fi is probably the most secure. People can disagree with me on that, but most other protocols either aren't secure at all or just haven't been beat around like Wi-Fi has. I'm not saying that Wi-Fi is perfect, but it's like even if I had a wired solution, I'm trying to control these things through my network. So even if I wired that through a physical wire, which I could, that camera, has an Ethernet port, it's still going to be on my network that has Wi-Fi, so it doesn't matter. It's like, mm,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the whole like I'm just trying to block like 95% of people. And the other 5% is kind of like home invaders. You can put a lock on your door. There's locksmiths that'll be like, "Oh, that doesn't use this certain kind of thing," so they can pick your lock. It's like, then they can have my TV.
yeah,
Like, I mean, take it.
yeah. It's I once was reading a book about locks, and they were talking about how, um, most locks have 5 pins. I think it is in them. Anyway, it depends on the lock. Um, and they're like, you know, actually, I don't think it was on locks. It was on just security overall. But they're like, yeah. So a lock salesman comes to you and goes, yeah, our lock has 6 pins in it instead of 5. And you're like, well, no one's gonna pick. If it's gonna take them so long to pick 5 pins, it's like the difference between 5 and 6. No one's gonna sit at your door. They're either gonna break the lock or a window. They're not gonna sit there and pick your lock. The thing is, you try to block everybody. There's no such thing as a 100% secure system, but you do your best.
Right.
And I had someone once to me. There was I think I don't remember the exact scenario, but it was a work thing. So I'm just going to bring up a scenario at work. Years ago, we had a computer at work. We had 2 workstations, and one was for the CAD system, computer aided dispatch, where we can look up information on calls, which is technically run by the sheriff's office. So they were very strict on what we could do on those computers. And then we had ours where we do reports and stuff, and we can surf the internet and stuff on that. And we weren't supposed to be surfing the internet on the other one. Well, people were, because someone else is using this computer and they wanted to surf the internet. I'm going back 15 years ago where not, most people had laptops, but not everybody did. So people depended on these computers. And of course, one of them got a virus, and all these inappropriate ads started popping up all the time on the sheriff's computer. So then they locked them down. And all they did was turn off DNS on it. So you're still connected to the internet. If you know the IP address of a website, you can still go to it. But I couldn't type in Google, and I'm like, that's like walking around outside like this. It's like you're now not looking at what's going on, but it's still you're just walking by everything and not seeing it. Anyway, it's just there's yeah, stupid things people do. And my point of that was somebody said to me when I brought that up or something else, they go, oh well, and I showed them how easy it was to go to Google if you knew the IP address. Well, they're not trying to stop people like you. They're trying to secure it from the random person attacking it. I'm like, what? if someone's attacking the computer, you would think that they probably have skills. A random person isn't just attack. Well, I mean, it could be a random person attacking you, but you should be worried about the knowledgeable person attacking your computer system.
And they're the ones that are smart enough to do something with the information too.
Yeah.
Like.
There's also, I don't know if you ever played around with Kali Linux. I used to back in the day. It was called Backtrack. It's just a version of Linux which is now based on Debian. I think it used to be based on Ubuntu, and it just has a whole bunch of pen testing tools on it. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's useful, but I think it's a lot of bloat. It's basically just a distro you pop in, and all the tools are there to just run attacks on different devices and stuff. And a lot of people in security industry use it.
Yeah.
And it does have useful tools on it. I just think it's one of those. It's got everything instead of specifically what you need. For me, it's like if I'm going to do an attack on a computer, I'm going to look at what attacks are viable on that and get the software for that, and not just use a whole bunch of package. But anyway, there's Metasploit is like one of the big programs people use on it, which you can install on any system, but just Kali Linux has it pre-installed. And then there's Armitage. Armitage was again, I haven't played with it in a long time. It has it's basically a GUI front end on it for Metasploit, and it has what's called a Hail Mary attack. Basically, you search your network, you pick the computer, you say Hail Mary, and it just runs every single attack on that could possibly do. And I'm thinking back, probably about 10 years ago, I used that, and I'd be able to pop shells on some Windows machines. I did a couple of times. It's like, oh, I got shells, and then you run another attack, and it starts dumping everyone's passwords from that machine. So it's like, you don't need to be skilled to do something like that in a lot of cases. I used to do stuff like more security stuff back in the day, but it just got to the point where it's just like, things were so insecure. It was like so easy. Like you go to a restaurant, you do a port scan, you find the register, you find their fax machine with a scanner on it, and you click scan in the web interface, and you're scanning the documents that are on it straight to your phone and stuff like that. And it was just kind of like, it wasn't even worth the challenge. Nowadays, I think things are more secure. I mean, everything uses HTTPS, and there's everyone's encrypting, and I think most businesses separate if they have Wi-Fi, they're not running their registers on the same line. I think people are getting a little smarter than they were 10 years ago. But every once in a while, I'll look up a video on Kali Linux and see what they are, and the videos are so stupid. Most of them are phishing attacks, but it's like they're installing software to do a phishing, like, oh, install this, and then it will generate a fake Facebook login for you and log all the passwords. It's like, well, why do you need a program to do that? Go to Facebook, say save web page, go in and change where it's submitting the passwords to your server. You're done,
Yeah.
And you know what? That's not going to work on most machines, because nowadays with HTTPS being a thing that everyone's using, if they don't realize that it's not, I mean, they would have to not realize that it's not Facebook, which I guess not. I don't know. To me, it's like fairly obvious if you're really at Facebook or not, nowadays.
Well, I know that some high-level hackers will use like FC book. So if you aren't like really paying attention to that missed A,
Yeah,
there we go.
yeah, I get it. It's just
It's gone so far that like Facebook's and Amazon, they're buying DNSs that are anywhere remotely close so that they can get them back. But I've seen phishing attacks that I've gotten in my email that are like, click here, and it's like PayPal dot, Isuzu be something,
right. Yeah.
NigerianPrince.com.
I was watching a video the other day on YouTube. This guy that I watched that messes with the scammers online and stuff like that, and he was talking about one they have, and it was up. I checked it after he put up the video. It was like Garmin upgrade now .online, and then he listed a bunch of other websites, because he gets into their computers, because these hackers these scammers use TeamViewer, I think, they get you to log, so they can remotely fix your computer, so they get these people to log in, but he knows how to turn it backwards, and he gets into their computers, and then he'll be messing with them, and he set it up to where he was pretending to be a customer, automated on all these different computers and sending them all these things. And he said there's only 5 people in the room, but they're all talking to like 10 people. All of a sudden, he starts sending them all these notifications, and they start realizing that a lot of them are scam or are not real customers. And they start blocking them, but he's in their computer, so he's unblocking their IP addresses and stuff like that. And Jim Brown, yes, someone in the chat room said Jim Brown. That's the channel, Jim Brown. He does really good. There actually was he just worked with a documentary crew on. He collected all these things, and he gets into their cameras, and he's actually taking, they have a closed circuit TV hooked to their computer network, so he's able to see who in the scammers while they're talking to people on their own cameras. So he'll let them hack into his computer, give him access to the computer, but he'll set like his background's this like bright purple thing, and then he looks at the cameras and finds the person talking to someone with a bright purple. He's like, oh, that's the person I'm talking to, and then he'll turn on the camera on them. Yeah, the BBC documentary. He handed it to the authorities, plate them, and they would lift it, and they wouldn't lift a finger. Yeah, they're all in other countries, and the police just don't do anything. I think they did end up raiding that place because it was just such a big deal with the documentary and stuff. But for the most part, he tries to report it to the authorities, but they're in other countries and they just don't care,
Yeah. Interpol has bigger fish to fry.
Right. Before we started this live stream, you were talking about your current Windows install and the issue you were having. Because bring that up, and then I'm going to bring up something about Linux on the topic.
Yeah, so we're switching everything from Mac hardware. I don't know if I told you this.
I don't know if you told me this.
We're switching from. So I told you the only piece of Mac software I run is my computer because, well, aside from my iPad, but
that's for flying the drone, or.
Yeah, that's just to fly the drone because DJI and Apple are all nice together. Mm-hmm. But we used Final Cut Pro for editing, and we're switching to Adobe because I just can't. Hackintoshes are great, but they're really high maintenance, and as we start to scale, I can't expect like my employee in Gainesville to know how to build a Hackintosh and maintain it when something inevitably goes wrong.
Uh-huh.
So we're switching to Adobe and Windows. Consequently, and I wanted to go install a fresh system of Windows on a gigabyte motherboard with a Ryzen chip, and I get through it all, which is a pain in the butt. I don't really know why the install was such a pain in the butt. Finally reflashed a USB drive with a new install of Windows, got everything running, got in, and it wouldn't connect to the internet. The network, it said the network driver didn't exist.
Is this Wi-Fi or Ethernet?
Ethernet. So, which is really unusual for Ethernet not to work. This is the first time I've built like 10 computers. This is the first time I've run into this. So I looked up on their support pages, and like one of the top results for fixing this is to download the driver for an Ethernet issue. And what I ended up doing to fix it is, and I tried downloading it from another computer and importing it, and I think there might be a hardware problem. I have no idea. But I ended up just getting a USB dongle for Wi-Fi because it didn't come built in, and downloading that drive because I knew what that driver was. Downloading that driver, and that made it work. And that was my solution because I had to have the computer today in Gainesville.
Right.
And I did halfway.
One good way to always, try to figure out whether it's a hardware issue or just a driver issue is you could have just booted Linux and seen if it worked then.
Good point.
Huh? Yeah. That made me think of, I've heard people complain about Debian and limited Wi-Fi support out of the box with Debian because their Debian, with their repositories, they try to separate out free and non-free software. So they'll have a repository that's only free software, then they'll have their non-free repositories, which is usually lots of its drivers and stuff like that. So lots of times, I guess the install disks don't have a large range of Wi-Fi drivers, and people say, I guess the directions online are to use a USB dongle from another computer, download the drivers, and bring them over to your Debian machine to get that working. I've never had that issue because Ethernet just has always worked on Linux for me. So if I had a machine that had Wi-Fi, I usually just plug in the Ethernet for a few minutes, install the driver, just say install non-free drivers and install whatever. That and then I know that more and more machines are coming without Ethernet ports. Um, but I also most of the time that's not even an issue for me because I don't use the Debian install disks anymore. I usually when I install, I use the Bootstrap, which is a program that allows you to do basically a net install of Debian or I guess a lot of other distributions from a running version of Linux. Basically, you just type the Bootstrap and tell it what version of Debian you want, and it does a net install. So I can pop in an Ubuntu flash drive, which would have my Wi-Fi drivers on it, and say to Bootstrap and install Debian, to my hard drive using Ubuntu. I wouldn't use Ubuntu. Usually, I use Gremlin is one that I normally use, and they have a fully automated thing, and they have most of your Wi-Fi drivers, I guess, because it's always worked out of my box Wi-Fi drivers for that. And then once I have Debian installed, while I'm still doing the Bootstrap, which at that point before I boot into the Debian system, I'd make sure Wi-Fi drivers are installed. So I've never had to do the copy to a flash drive and move it over, because even if I had a Debian install already, are you familiar with what a Chroot is?
You've explained it to me once before, but
Yeah, it's awesome. It's very very useful. Basically, to simplify it in thinking about like a Windows machine is basically imagine that you had a hard drive that had two partitions on it. You had a Windows 10 partition and a Windows 7 partition, and you're using the Windows 10 partition and you want to do something in Windows 7, you just say chroot and point it to the Windows partition, the Windows 7 partition, and all of a sudden you're still using your Windows 10 kernel, but you're running Windows 7 for it's using that partition as your main drive. So you do that. You can do that with any version of Linux. That's how you can run. You can be running Android on your phone, but then you can chroot into Debian or many other Linux distributions. So basically, you're running Android, which is using the Linux kernel, but then you say, look at this folder, or look at this image, or look at this SD card, wherever your file system is, and say, use this kernel that I'm currently running, but everything else, look at this drive, or look at this partition. And so it's very useful for things like that. Like if I had a problem where I couldn't get my Wi-Fi drivers working, I would just boot another version of Linux, chroot into Debian, and I'm already online with my current running Linux distro, and I just install everything and then exit back out. And when I reboot, it's made those changes. That's also if you ever forget your Linux password, you can boot any live disk to that system, chroot into your hard drive, and you'll when you chroot in, you'll be rooting as root because you're root on the main system, and then you can change the passwords for any user you want. So it's very very useful for many many different things. But it's like I even have two little routers, wireless routers, little tiny ones that were like $15, and they both are able to install OpenWRT or DDWRT, and at that point they both have the biggest thing about chrooting is you need to get that file system on there. Well, both of these had USB ports on them. I think they're for turning it into hotspot or something like that. You're supposed to be able to put like a 3G dongle on it or something. But you can put it in a flash drive and you can run Debian on those routers because you just use that file system off a flash drive since the router itself doesn't have much storage. Again, people are viewing. Oh, we're up to 11 views. Awesome. Let us know how the volume is, if we're both at good volumes or if one of us needs to be louder or lower. And you know what? My microphone's not flashing, so I think I might be using this microphone tonight.
You are.
Oh, okay. Usually I use that microphone. Do I sound okay? Let me know. Okay. I
fine.
sound okay to you, right? I think that both microphones work good. I just usually use my bigger mic. So let's see. I'm going to look at my list of notes. Here's a good topic. So I got lists of stuff,
We're starting to get this production together.
Yes. So there's still some things from last time we didn't get to, and I've added a few things. But here's just a fun topic. Having a conversation. Someone says we sound great. Awesome. I was talking with my father-in-law a couple of weeks ago. And he says some interesting things. And we were just talking about things that our children won't have that we just take for granted. It started off because I made some sort of comment about we were talking about cooking meals. And like my sister-in-law right now, usually she eats out at restaurants. She lives alone, so she doesn't cook much because cooking for herself just isn't worth it. But with the whole pandemic
Yeah.
thing and stay at home and stuff, um, and he talked about how when he was younger, he didn't, when he was single, he didn't cook either. And I made a comment on like, oh, when you were single, we probably didn't have microwaves, right? And she thought I was joking, like making fun of me. So I go, no. I mean, he got married in '81. I go, I'm not sure. I don't think microwaves came out till the early '80s, which was actually the late '70s, but it was a couple of years before it became normal for people to have them.
Sure.
And he even told the story about like them getting their first one was like his parents or his wife's parents bought one, and then a year later they wanted a newer one because they were smaller because microwaves were huge at the time, and so they gave it to them. And they didn't like, what do we do with this? What do we do with a microwave? It's taking up counter space. But then he said, Um, what sort of thing do you think our kids won't have that we take for granted? And and sometimes he says stuff, and he admits he says stuff to start arguments. But I think he was serious with this one. He said, I don't think they'll have social media because it's going to be outlawed. What are your
Ooh.
thoughts on that? I know.
I think that that's a stretch from the Constitution. I mean,
Yeah, he said something about how they're going to consider it too
maybe
much of a harm that it's not going to be free speech. I don't care either way on that. It's just going to be impossible to do.
maybe unregulated social media. I think you could make an argument for that, but I think that like if you look at the work, and I'm not a fan of Facebook, but if you look at the work that they and their subcontractors do to at least try to moderate the content that goes on,
Mm-hmm.
I think that they put an honest effort forward, even if it's extremely detrimental to the mental health of the employees that actually carry out those duties. I don't know if you're familiar with. There's a contractor in Tampa called Cognizant
Mm-hmm.
that used to their job. They were contracted by Facebook and their employees. They basically paid like I think it was like $13 an hour, and your job would be to sit in a room, look at a computer, and watch someone take a dead iguana and just beat it back and forth till gore came out, and go, yeah, that's probably not something that everyone should see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it came into the news when a guy killed himself there because of how bad the mental condition. I mean, you'd have 12 hours a day or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
no.
It could be. I mean, that was like a mild video. There's like little girls being abused, and
Sure, sure.
anything that goes up that gets flagged goes to them. And I think the idea is to basically supervise, train an AI to do a lot of that, and maybe they get the kick out of the AI that where they're like, we don't know what this is. I'm not sure the exact feature, but yeah, they legitimately they did have PTSD, and they
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of insane. So I think there's some middle ground where you can have moderated content, but I could definitely understand the argument that like at some point the government might go, "Hey, we need to do this because people getting PTSD and killing themselves, that's not going to work."
Mm-hmm.
You know?
My point was, it's just you can't. It's just impossible to do. This is with the internet. It's like, yeah, something like Facebook. Once they get big, and people think when they think social media, they think Facebook and YouTube. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's like really social media is pretty much most of the internet. It's like it's the communication. It's basically what the internet originally was. It's forums and people posting stuff. And you think you're going to regulate something like that? They might be able to force Facebook or the big players to do stuff.
Yeah.
But look at North Korea and the restrictions on their internet. And you know what? People who live there still are accessing the outside world. It's impossible. It's like to think that you can stop that is just showing a lack of complete just understanding of what the internet is and how there is no way to stop people from doing stuff like that. I mean, how hard is
Yeah.
it? I could in 5 minutes write a website that allows people to post comments like a forum. That's social media. I can throw it up, on a $5 computer and have people access it. That's social media. How would they stop me from doing that? I could put it up in a coffee house and walk away, and when that server gets caught, throw another $5 one up on another open Wi-Fi somewhere.
Well, and I think too, like you have people that have argued for internet as a utility, and it or as like a public utility, kind of like water.
Hmm.
And um, regardless of how you think about that, it is a utility like water, and the infrastructure exists. And if you told people you can't drink water anymore, they will find a way to drink water.
Hmm. Yeah.
You're not stopping that. Um, and similarly, I mean, you built this huge network of cables that now you've given people access to. And even if you regulate the ISPs, you've got like Miami. Was it you that was telling me about like areas in Miami where they all have like a collective that where they make their own network in Miami, just a giant. It was like
Uh,
5,000 people that share a common network.
Yeah, I didn't talk about Miami, but there are projects out there where you can take old Linksys routers, and people are making mesh networks. You can look up maps online, and if you get them high enough with a clear line of sight, they can go miles and miles. And people do have these networks, so
Yeah,
it's not impossible to do.
you can't regulate something you have no physical control over.
Yeah.
That that doesn't work.
And like I said, like even going back to like this ESP 32 chip, which has a camera on it, cost me $6, I think, and I haven't used it, but it has an SD card slot there. I mean, it can be run as a web server, and it costs me $5, $6. And again, it has Wi-Fi built in, and I could make this run my social media site, have it mirror someplace else, throw this anywhere there's open Wi-Fi, someone finds it and takes it away, which trying to find this would be difficult. I mean, you could block its MAC address or something, and then 5 minutes later, I spin up another server with what I backed up from it. It's there's no way to stop it.
Carol Baskin definitely killed her husband, and if you think otherwise, please put it in the comments.
um, the documentary sure made it seem like she did. I was watching the Legal Eagle. I don't know if you ever watch him on YouTube, and he's a lawyer and he talks about lawyer stuff. He answers questions and stuff, and he's done two on the Tiger King stuff, and
Sure.
he didn't go into detail on it, and he's like, I'm not going to comment on a 30-year-old case and stuff. He goes, but there's a lot more out there than what the documentary showed, but uh,
You mean TV isn't? That's not real. What? Yeah, and like someone asked me, I forget who it was, probably one of my sisters the other day. They're like, because the case got reopened. I don't know if you heard. Tampa police force decided they're going to reopen the case, which woo,
yeah,
30-year-old
let
cold case.
them.
That's
Good
so
chance.
long.
Good job.
If she ground him up and fed him to the tigers,
Nothing
there's nothing
left.
fine.
Yeah.
It's 30 years later. But I, if I was sitting on that jury, as much as I think she did it, I can't say that there isn't reasonable doubt,
Yeah.
right? So I can't convict her
Yeah.
based off of like you seem kind of creepy, but that's not illegal.
Whether she did it or not, everybody in that documentary is crazy.
Oh yeah.
and
No,
it's scary. Um, and like, yeah. Anyway, someone said they're the only person who hasn't seen it. My wife hasn't seen it either. No, it's an interesting show, but it's scary to know that there's people out there like that, and that they're yeah. Someone asks if I know anything about databases, and he's talking about I don't even know how to say that. I've seen it before. Postgres, I guess. The only databases I've messed with are MySQL and SQLite. So those are the only ones I have experience with. So if you have any questions about those, I'll do my best to answer, but I know just enough to get information in and out of them. And then manipulate it how I need once I pull the information out. Friends in the 90s played LAN games by do-it-yourself, LAN networks, rooftops to rooftop. That's cool. Back in the 90s when I tried playing video games, tried doing it over dial-up, and that was not fun. I actually, one of the games, I don't think I ever got Doom playing over the modem back in the day. Quake, I had there's a total Quake mod out there that was an X-Men Quake mod, which was awesome. It had its issues. Um, I was actually just playing it a couple days ago, showing my kids it. It was one of these. So Quake, it was very easy to mod, and people would do fan-based games. And this guy started working on an X-Men game using the Quake engine. And at the same time, Marvel wanted a X-Men game. They saw this guy working on it and said, "Hey, we'll pay you to make it an official game." But it was one of the first official mods that you had to buy the original. So you had to already have Quake, and then you would buy this disc to mod it.
Oh,
You know,
skin pack.
yeah, you know, and it was actually a really cool game. But reading the history on it, it looks awesome. It's a great concept, but there were a lot of glitchy stuff in the game. Like just 2 or 3 years ago, I had a friend come over and we played a bunch of it together, a few levels of it. But there were issues where like it was obviously you could play multiplayer, which was cool because in the actual game you're fighting X-Men clones and you're this guy that has this arm that can change in all these different guns. So you're basically going around fighting all these X-Men clones, and each X-Men had two attacks, a close range and a far away attack. But when you played multiplayer, you could be any of those X-Men. And some of them were way stronger than others. Like Beast had this thing where he would slam on the ground and shake a whole room and hit people in the room. And you just keep doing that, and the other people kept falling around like this and couldn't attack back. Um, then but playing multiplayer, there would be times where I'd go through a room and the door behind me would close and my friend would be stuck there until I finished the level. He couldn't finish, and there were glitches in this stuff. But it's one of those also, again, it was like one guy working on it. It was just this fan thing. And it had the same problem. If you ever look up on YouTube, I like looking up. I'm not a gamer. I don't play a lot of video games besides Doom. Um, and I'm talking old school Doom. Um, if I like watching history on video games, and anytime you watch a history on a game that like flopped or never got finished or had all these bugs and problems, it's always the same issue. The company's trying to rush it out for Christmas. We have to get it out by Christmas. So they're pushing these deadlines and things get rushed and don't get finished. Instead of just taking your time and finishing the game. And that's basically what happened with this game, you know. And I actually looked it up, and the guy who created he put it out in the public domain, so you can actually go. It's up on archive.org, which so is the original Quake, so you can download both of those and get it running pretty easy on a Linux system. Um, I saw that he had started companies from Australia, or at least lives in Australia, and he does like animations for commercials. So I looked up his company and I sent him an email a couple of years ago saying, "Hey, I was just recently replaying your game and I want to thank you for your hard work." And he sent me an email back. He obviously really appreciated it, and that someone was thinking of a game he made 25 years ago. And but it's really cool. You should look it up sometime. Again, the game is a little glitchy, but it was a cool concept, and the models were really well done for back in the day Quake type models. It's before you could bone models and move them, so you actually had to animate each frame of movement, which I did Quake mods back in the day, so I know what that's like. Which brings me to another topic. I've been playing some old games with my kids, and I've been playing on two different Spider-Man games. There was a Spider-Man game that came out in like 1999 or 2000, and then like 2 years later, one came out that was based on the first movie, and they're both great games. I should have gotten some screenshots of them up for this. I'm not gonna go look for them now because it'll probably mess up our video. But I miss those days. Um, this is something for me. I like making video games more than I do playing them sometimes. But back in the day, if I started playing a video game, like it would inspire me to go start making a video game. And back then, the 90s and even into the early 2000s, um, when people made games, it was usually just a handful of people. And I would look at these games and they would inspire me. I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. It would take a lot of work, but I could do that. I can make models like that. Nowadays, video games are so detailed and so and I respect both. Um, but I find the old ones more inspiring because it's like something I do. I look at the new ones, it's like, oh, there's no way I could do that. There's obviously 50 people working on the models alone on this game, spending
Well,
weeks and weeks just making the models. And I prefer the older style because I find them more inspirational. And to have the low poly count models, but make them still look good, and to know that this is supposed to be Wolverine or this is supposed to be Spider-Man,
I
is
think
amazing.
the trend recently that I hate the most, I think it started with Halo.
Hmm.
And it was when entire teams of people were dedicated to making sure the map was fair. And I always thought that was so dumb. Part of the allure of video games for me is like you get to that one part that's just impossibly hard.
Hmm.
And you're like, this is stupid. And that's the point. Is there should be struggle. It should teach you like video games. They always told me as a kid, video games didn't teach you anything. I learned some of the best things in this world from video games. I've used words that my teachers are like, "How do you know that word?" And I'm like, "RuneScape." And I just think that that level of it like teaches you perseverance and that life isn't fair, which is an important life lesson. That now it's like it also makes it too so that a 13-year-old with nothing can do to do is like on par with a 20 something year old that might be have a
Right.
job, not be home all day, and you could actually go out there. Call of Duty was the one that brought in the leveling systems that are terrible, where you end up fighting against a 13-year-old that that's all they do, and then you cannot win.
Yeah, on that topic, one game I think got it right because it's hard when you're making a video game to make it challenging but not discouraging. That's one of the things my kids, they have their Amazon tablets that cost $30, but um, I put emulators on here, so they've been playing Kirby and they play Chex Quest, which is a Doom mod and stuff like that. But they'll come to me and be like, I can't beat this boss. And occasionally I'll play for them. Most of the time I say, what's the point of playing the game if you're going to have me do all the hard parts? You need to figure out. And they play for a while and then they eventually get past it. But going back to the leveling thing, sometimes I think it's very well done, like in Mario Kart. Mario Kart's was very good about if you're in first place, you get the lesser of the weapons, but like if you're in last place, you start
No,
getting the better weapons to help you. So it's kind of makes it more of even for everyone who's playing.
without a
Um, and that could be bad for certain games, but I think in a game like that, I think it worked out really well, and they did a great job on that. Let's look at the chat room here, see if we're missing.
I can also talk louder if that helps. I'm My wife always says I talk so loud, so I try to.
uh, let's see. Checks Quest over LAN on smartphone occasionally, though. You'd be proud, haha. Yep, that's basically what my kids do. And I have played Chex Quest with my daughter too. And I actually even for at one point took the Chex Quest mod and let my daughter make level. Like I tried to get rid of all the Doom assets and let her build a level. For a few months ago, she was doing that on her computer. So this is something I've been asked so many times. So I'm a big Doom fan, the original Doom, and the first at least two Quakes. By three, I kind of three was when it became where it was all deathmatch, and I've never really been into that. I like a goal and an objective trying to do so. I respect the game for what it is, but I was never a big fan of Quake 3. I played it though. But someone's asking about Half Life. I have never played Half Life, and people go crazy when I say that. So I really, really have to check that out sometime.
We'll have to get Gabe together and play that, and then the X-Man game.
Yeah, yeah, that would be cool. um, let's see. The models were so well done. In fact, back in the 90s, I worked for Circuit City, and I started making my own Doom mod, and I was using some of the models from the X-Men game, and then reskinning them. I was taking pictures of my friends and putting the skin over like Cyclops, and stuff like that. And I knew this. One of the managers at Circuit City farted a lot, so I took the Cyclops model, and then there was also a model of the X-Men Cannonball, who lower body would turn into a flame and he'd shoot across the screen. I took his flaming and I put it at the Cyclops button. I would make his attack. He'd turn around and shoot a farting flame at you. It was good.
Oh,
Um, hey, is it possible to all to raise. So Andrew's volume needs to be raised. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a micro. It's because your microphone's like right here, and mine's like
Well,
right
it's also.
that far away.
Let's see. I don't know if that makes a difference, but yeah, I can
So
put.
now you're closer to mine,
Okay,
but you're probably go halfway. You'll probably be right there.
I moved you up a little bit, Andrew. So.
Woo!
So let me. Hello, hello, hello. Now you say it.
Hi.
Okay.
Can you hear
We're both at the top of the green, so hopefully that's better. Let us know if it is. There's a difference
They're gonna say
between
Chris.
challenging and a chore, though. Yeah, someone said they don't like most video games because they find them a chore. I kind of feel the same way. There are games out there that I find enjoyable, but I'm at in no way a gamer. Although, like I said, I play original Doom almost every night. But there's so many levels out there and mods that people have made. I don't play the same levels over and over again, which is nice. Um,
Minecraft is awesome. You talk about a game that can be built by like 5 people.
we play Mine Test in our house.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I've played a little bit because my daughter loves it. Both my kids love it, and I've played with them, but just a little bit. I personally don't know what the difference. Minecraft and Mine Test look the same to me. A lot of people think that Mine Test is a ripoff of Minecraft, but actually they both came out within weeks of each other, and they're actually both based or a clone or whatever you want to call it of another game. So they're actually both a copy,
Yeah.
a knockoff. I hate the term knockoff, not just because it was a horrible Van Damme movie in the late '90s with Rob Schneider in it too. But
Mine's a great game.
so what's a great game?
All right, I've got the
Mine.
chat going here, so I'm like reading these in real time.
Okay.
And someone said I play Minesweeper, and that's a really fun game. Have you ever like actually tried to play Minesweeper?
Oh, back in the day, I used to all the time. Yeah, back in
Yeah.
back in the late '90s, be at work and have a computer and be like, "Yep, okay," trying to guess that, and I got really good at solitaire. Um,
Yeah.
okay, while we're on that subject, I'm going to bring up a slideshow here because I was watching a video the other. See here. Sorry, just realized that the slideshow was going and you guys couldn't hear me. So let me real quick bring that slideshow back up and add in some audio. No? So it was a big thing for a while to have windows that weren't rectangles,
Oh yeah, you remember those?
Yeah, yeah, and like Windows Media Player had a lot of them, but other applications had them too. And I always thought that was the coolest thing. I actually have some videos up on doing that with Python and GTK, having windows that are, basically the window's still there, you just don't see it and it's transparent. But I would have thought that, I guess it's not the most efficient way to do a window for an application. But you would think 2020, like all applications would be like this, where they were.
Yeah. Like if you had seen a movie with like 2020 in it in the late 90s,
Uh-huh.
like all the windows would be shaped differently because
Yeah.
that looks super cool.
And then,
Yeah.
do you remember? They also had, and they still have them. You can get them for Linux. The ones that where you have characters walk around your screen. There's a cat one. You can get a penguin one and a cat one where they follow. Well, there's ones
Yeah.
where they like fall onto your windows and then walk, and then they climb down. Then there's other ones that
Yeah.
follow your mouse cursor.
Yeah, it was kind of like Clippy, but they were different.
Yeah. Clippy, but where Clippy was supposed to be a guide for something, these were just walk around your desktop and stuff like that.
I remember those. I loved the cat. I had the cat.
Yeah, there's a cat. It's in the repositories. I forget
I
what
think
it's
it
called.
was the ants a couple times too. Now that
Yeah.
PY guys, Pie guy, Pie guy.
Hi
I
guy.
think it's
What time
like
is it?
Python. Yeah, I got you. I got you. No worries.
I've got just a few minutes left, and then I got to get going.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's see. Here's okay. So we talked about my father-in-law and his comments on social media being outlawed in the future. Here's one from my father, maybe 5 6 years ago. He bought his first Android tablet, some cheap, it was probably an Amazon Fire on sale or something like that, and he complained that it didn't come with a user manual. which I get, certain things need user manuals, but it's like, first of all, it's like software's constantly changing. Writing a user manual is going to be useless. But it's like, what don't you get by now? It's like, it's a computer. It has icons. You click on it. It's like, I get there's, but if you need to learn something, you need to look up something, you just Google it.
You also have like the manuals baked into the device.
Right. He wanted an actual physical book he could look stuff up in.
I mean,
Bonzi Buddy. Do you remember Bonzi Buddy? It was a purple gorilla. There were other ones too. There was a parrot, and they would sing. They were actually ended up. I don't think they were supposed to be, but they were bundled, or at least accused of being bundled with malware or spyware or adware or something like that. But it was this gorilla that would walk around your screen. He would sing to you. He would get bored. You could type stuff, and he would say it and stuff like that. There's a whole history on it too. Yes. How do you say that? Oneko, Anioko. That's the cat that follows your cursor. You know what? Let me see here real quick.
Google it.
Search. I'm gonna do better than that. I'm gonna install it. Oh, it might already be installed on my computer. Yep, there it is. Can I get it to come over here? Oh, you see the cat? Well, you will see it when it comes up on YouTube. Oh, you know what? You can't see it because I'm only grabbing the web browser, not the full screen. But there is a cat following my cursor right now.
I love that. The things that people thought we would do with computers, and instead we made cats that follow cursors.
No. I guess that's the name of those Chinese cats that wave, because that's what's coming up with the image search.
Ah. Those are cool. The lucky cats, though.
Yeah, this one doesn't really look like that. It just looks like a regular black outlined white cat.
Had similar thought recently. People are less independent these days with mechanical things like cars, but you solve your own problems with tech these days, so you don't get a manual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my flight instructor, actually. Do you know Dean?
Dean? No, I don't think so.
So my flight instructor, like last time I saw him, which is my employee for North Florida's dad, he was like really driving home the point that he was disappointed that my generation doesn't work on like mechanics anymore. He's like, there's hundreds of planes out there that are perfectly able to fly, but no one knows how to work on them anymore. So they're like getting scrapped, but they're perfectly fine if you just knew how to fix like a carburetor.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows how to fix a carburetor anymore?
Right. I wish I knew more about cars. And it's just one of those things that can be expensive, where for me, software, people think computers are expensive. I actually just looked up the other day, the computer I'm running, my viewers on YouTube actually paid for. I built it back in 2011. And I just said, hey, I need a new computer. And people started donating $10. Some people donated 50, 100, and one guy donated $1,000. I immediately contacted him and said, you made a mistake. You put too many zeros. And he said, no, I enjoy your videos. And I ended up raising like 15 or 1,600 bucks, and that's how I got my current computer, and it still runs great. People think because I like computers that I spend a lot on computers. I'm like, no, if you know about computers, you shouldn't be spending much.
I must not know anything.
Well, you do a lot of CPU and GPU intensive stuff.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like if you get good software, most basic everyday things, you shouldn't need to buy a $900 phone. I'm not saying nobody needs a $900 phone, but most people out there who are spending $600, $700, $800, $900 on a phone don't need a phone. don't need a phone like that. It's like, and again, going back to, well, I won't say, somebody I talked to who recently bought a new iPhone was like, well, I needed a new phone. I guess all phones are over $600. I'm like, what? I go, I am very, very happy with my Moto X4 that cost me 135 bucks. Actually, it was 145 after shipping, because they were like 50% off, buy one get one, and so I bought one for me and one for my wife. And the only reason I even bought that was because my wife had broke her phone. I still have my Nexus phone, which cost me 175 bucks, and it's still a great phone. I love that. This Moto G, this one still works too. This one's a little slow when I play around with it. This is my play phone. It cost me, I think, around 175, 180 back in 2014. And again, the only reason I really upgraded was because, I got such good deals on the other ones, and sometimes my wife has broken her phones. I don't want to say, I'm not picking on her, but she's broken phones before, and if she's getting a new phone, I'm getting a new phone. Anyway, I forgot where I was going with that.
The cheapest iPhone 11 you can get right now. You can get the second gen SE for $400, but the cheapest iPhone 11 starts at $700.
That's ridiculous. That is so stupid. And and I'm very happy. This phone, it has dual lenses, which the wide angle lens comes in very handy, especially taking pictures of my kids, because it's hard to get them where you want them positioned. So to be able to switch over to wide angle lens. I know the new iPhone has 3 lenses on it. I'm assuming one's a standard, one's a zoom, and one's a wide angle. I don't even know why it has 3 lenses.
It's ultra wide, wide, and telephoto.
So it doesn't just have a standard lens? I guess the wide is the standard lens, I guess. And I get there's certain people, like, if I'm going to take a nice video, I'm going to get out my Canon camera, which you can get a nice Canon camera with a nice lens for $300-400 bucks.
But it's not 4K.
Well, yeah, I'm not even gonna get on that. It's picture quality. And phones have gotten a lot better, but if you really want good picture quality, it usually comes down to the lens, which you're not going to get anything great on a phone, but good enough, But you can buy. If photos are really important to you, if they're really important to you, spend $200 on a phone and another $300 on a nice camera with a nice lens, and you're still ahead of a $600 phone or a $700 phone.
Yeah.
I get that, the phone's more convenient, you always have it around, but even a phone that cost $135 2 years ago takes pretty decent photos.
No, I switched mine out, but that's because there's no one with removable batteries anymore.
I hate that
removable
too.
batteries? Like,
yeah. That's just something I did. The first phone I got that didn't have a removable battery, this Motorola does. I think it was the Nexus here. And when I bought it, I was like, because I always complain about how iPhones don't have battery. I'm like, And I looked up, can you replace the battery in this? Yeah, you technically can. You can't. You have to get a little plastic thing and wedge it apart and then unsolder the battery or whatever. But I at least looked up, could I do it? But at least, like if I was to buy a new battery's probably going to be $50. So if the phone only cost me $100, it's. But yeah, that's one of those things that iPhone did, and people fed into it. So then other companies like, well, it's working for them. It's like, why would you let a company do that to you? But now we're all kind of. The Motorola has.
One more time, I love your. You have an iPhone? I thought you were an Android guy. I'm like, I am. This is a Pixel. The difference is, I don't know if you can see it here. I've got 3 lenses, I believe. Maybe it's only 2, but they made it look like it's 3. The difference is, Apple really wants you to know how many lenses are on your phone. So if you look it up, they make it look like an old school range top, like cooktop with 3 circles. Someone said that to me. I can't unsee it now. It looks like a cooktop, and it looks bad.
Mm-hmm.
This looks so much better to just have a slate of glass that's kind of, at
Yeah.
least somewhat hidden. I don't know, my opinion, but
The uh,
uh,
the Nexus phone also didn't have an SD card slot, which I really hated at the time. But I got such a good deal on it. Luckily, my newer phone does have an SD card in it. Um, Either way, my keychain, I also have my own Nextcloud server running back there that everything syncs to. Actually, my phone syncs to that and my desktop, and then my desktop syncs to the other Raspberry Pi. So everything on my phone goes to three different computers. But then I also have my dual, flash drive that is the USB-C and
yeah,
regular USB. So it's very easy for me to plug this into the phone and then plug it into a computer.
you get a new
And
one
that,
recently?
huh?
So a new one?
The old metal one I had, it must have got bent. I kept putting it in the phone, it just kept sliding out, and it's like it would see it and then it wouldn't see it, and so I mean, it was $12 or something like that, and I think my old one was 32, or maybe my old one was only 16, and this one's 32. No, this one's 64 gigs, so it's a lot bigger than my old one. I still have the old one around here somewhere. The other one looked nice because it was silver, but it stopped working. But it's
Somebody
coming. Oh, go ahead.
somebody asked what we use for notes and syncing, and I don't know if he means for these presentations. If you do, that's flattering. We don't use anything. This is all just on the top of our heads, and we're apparently doing better than the last 2 weeks, if that's what that means. But
For syncing files, I recommend three things.
you know,
Nextcloud is awesome. SyncThing is awesome, and rsync. Rsync, I have scripts that I manually run every once in a while on my computer. SyncThing does an awesome job. Just I have videos on it. Search my videos. SyncThing. Also look up Arthur Reeder on YouTube. He's the one who I saw using it originally. And if you just need to sync files, it's great. Both my kids' Amazon tablets, their main directory sync to my desktop. So if I need to put new games or when I say games, I mean ROMs on there for them, audio files, or my daughter is reading books like crazy, so I pulled books off archive.org. I just copy them to a folder, and a minute later they're on her laptop. This is my son's laptop, or my son's tablet, my daughter's tablet. So those are three great programs for syncing. The reason I do the rsync thing too is I am a little leery with automatic syncing programs like SyncThing, and there's settings on them to where do you automatically overwrite a file when it changes? Do you ask? Because if you accidentally screw up a file, you don't necessarily want it overriding, and then you can have backup syncs. So those are all things to take into account. I like manually doing syncing. I like the automated thing, but I also like manually backing up every once in a while just to make sure. That's why I have my phone synced to my desktop, and then I manually sync that to one of my Raspberry Pis.
and
Um,
doesn't SyncThing run on rsync?
I don't know. It makes security keys, and I mean, it runs in the background. I don't have to run any commands once you sync them, and yeah, and I have it set
It
to.
might be an automated interface for rsync. If I might be. Let me look that up.
Yeah, look that up. I think use non-replaceable battery for.
Yeah, he was talking about waterproofing, which is great. That's how we lost the 3.5 millimeter jack as well. I'm really pissed about that.
All my phones still have 3.5 millimeter jacks, but I used to use them all the time. But then I spent $3 and got a Bluetooth receiver in my car, and then my new car had Bluetooth. So, but yeah, I used to use the headphone jacks all the time. Um, I think it's silly to remove it, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world for me. Um, yeah, like removing. Is that why they removed it? Because of waterproofing?
Yeah, that's how they get the IP designation because they don't have the
I thought.
issue.
Well, I thought it was just to get you to buy new Bluetooth stuff from the companies, but
Well, the best part is Apple originally did it, and they did it before they waterproofed the phone.
yeah,
So Apple did, and then everybody else followed. And at least the thing is though, there were phones out there with removable batteries before removable batteries became uncool, and they had IP designations as well. They probably weren't as easy to engineer, The other thing that had them doing that is they wanted to slim the phones down, which was easier to do if you didn't have to have the little like snaps and stuff in. And
Hmm.
if you don't have 3.5 millimeters, you have space to like extend the battery.
Yeah,
I
I
care
that
way too much
whole
about
the
that crap.
first of all, I think the whole slimming down of phones is silly in a lot of cases. So my current phone is the only phone that I've ever had a case for. I've
Yeah,
tried case on another phone, I never kept. So like when I had my Nexus, I didn't have the case. With this one, I didn't have a case. My phone before that, I didn't have a case. People get these thin phones and they put these thick cases on them. Why did I get a case for this? Because this phone is so slick and slippery. It kept slipping out of my hand, so I got a case for it just for having a grip, so I wouldn't drop it because I have yet to drop and break a phone. Um,
glass back. That was another trend that was,
oh
was
yeah.
but they have to do it for the cellular reception.
Mm.
Ah, oh, I think it's for wireless charging. You have to have a glass back.
Oh yes. These all things I don't do. I I I I I mean, it's great if they make the phones waterproof. I'm not going to bring my phone in the water. If I go out on a boat or something, I take one of my old backup phones and I put it in a Ziploc bag. Worst case scenario, I lose a phone that I don't need. That's why
Here's,
one of the
you can
reasons I
just
keep
put
those
your
in there.
SIM card around all willy nilly.
Well, I don't. I mean, I I could. I don't even worry about it
The
because
efficiency you have with some of that stuff is incredible.
the what?
The efficiency you have with some of that stuff. Like, I want my next project's to build a RAID server and have like 12 terabytes of storage because I've got all the video and stuff and all of my files at the office that I need backed up because it'd be really bad if we lost them all.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to get sync thing running and automate it to an extent, kind of do a 3-2-2 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And I've actually thought a lot about like asking you to help me with it because I'm so lost on that. But I have to look up server stuff anyway.
Yeah, I've never done a RAID system, but I would
Yeah,
assume it's pretty simple. I mean, that's once you plug it in, and when you install Linux, just I think at least back in the day, it used to ask, "Is this a RAID system?" So,
yeah,
um, yeah, that's because I don't even bother switching over because most things I can do through Wi-Fi. I don't need. I mean, I guess if I'm out on the boat, I don't even know what cell reception is out there because I don't bring my regular phone. Um, but when you get near shore, you're usually picking up Wi-Fi somewhere. And
yeah,
I only bring my phone out on a boat to take pictures, and as soon as it hits Wi-Fi, it automatically syncs them back to my home computer.
yeah.
So I do need to get going.
Yep.
But we should do this again soon. Everyone who watched, thanks for watching. I think we hit a good number tonight. I think we got up to 11 viewers at one point.
I think we're up to 12.
Oh, were we? I missed that. But you were one of them.
Well, you got to get your numbers somehow, right?
Yeah.
Every good business owner knows how to hit their numbers.
I
That's
feel like the first live stream we did, we had 20 people, right?
so.
And then
We
the
might-
two after that, we had like 4 or 5. And then tonight we did decent, if you
That was
consider
also
that
right
decent.
at the beginning of coronavirus. I think we got a spike from people having nothing to do.
Our last two videos were on Monday nights, and it's Friday night. So I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't know. But thank you for everyone who joined us tonight. And Andrew, it was good seeing you, good talking to you,
As
and
always.
I hope that you have a good evening.
Yep.
And bye, everybody.